Again, my name is Sean, and tonight we're going to be just doing a quick overview of our edit tab and our font window. So the font window is actually going to be what I was referring to as just this section in our design wizard. So this is where we'll work with all of our fonts. And then our edit tab will cover most of, not all, the buttons and what they do inside the edit tab tonight. So I definitely see some new people in here tonight. So have you guys, I know a lot of us have used the edit tab. Some of the features might, like the knockout and magic trap, but do you guys use any of the other features on the tab at all? All right, the split. Yeah, the split's one of my favorite features. So we'll definitely cover that tonight. But we have a lot of cool tools that some are helpful for rhinestones, others for vector artwork, and then just some neat little tools too. Okay, haven't used the magic trap. Yeah, so that's a great one too. So we'll cover what the magic trap does and why it's going to help you with certain types of designs. Totally new to this. Awesome. So this is a good one to view. Part one we did last week. We covered the live template editor, and then we covered some basics in the text effects too. Hey, Gracela. Yeah, so tonight, again, it's just going to be mostly the edit tab and the font window, and slowly we'll just do a little overview of the entire software. All right, so we'll start with the edit tab, and I'll draw a few shapes just so we can kind of see what some of these align buttons will do for us. So I drew a few shapes here. So one tool we have, and you'll see sometimes me use different tools maybe than than using the actual tool on the magic or the design wizard. I might use like Corel shortcuts. Hey Karen, welcome. So you can use them, you can go back and forth. You can just use the design wizard. You can use Corel shortcuts too. So a lot of these buttons that we might be going over tonight, at least like the first couple with the line, the guides, the nudge, the text spacing, there's other ways to access these tools. We just put them on the design wizard just so it's a quick, easy button. So the top part, you'll see a line. All this section does is align our objects that we're currently working with. So going from left to right, when you hover over it, you'll pretty much see down here what the button does. So we'll go through a few of these just so you get the hang of it. But again, once you hover over, you'll see this one is align center and middle. This one here is align center, align middle, align left, right, bottom, top, and left to right, right to left, top to bottom, bottom to top. So a lot of very similar tools. So on this example here, if I hit align center and middle, it's just going to take all my objects and center them to the middle of each other. So same way if you hit P on your keyboard, it's going to center all your objects. P as in Paul, but it's just going to move it to the middle of your page too. Now if you're using the align tools here, it's not going to necessarily go to the center of your page. So it's just going to, now if I had them both over here, it went to the center because that's where our object was. But if we have them both over here, you'll see they'll just center to each other. All right. So if we had some objects like this and we pick just center, it's just going to line them up in the center of each other. Same with our middle, it'll just line them up through the middle. It'll align left, align right, and so on. So the align tools there, most of the time the only ones you'll really use is probably your align center or middle. Most of the other ones we don't use too much, but these are the two on the left that we'll probably use the most. Right. So just a quick tool there. Now below that we have our guides. So what these will do for us is this one here will delete all the guidelines. So what the guidelines are is if you select and click on these rulers above, just left click and drag down, it'll drop these guidelines for you. So this makes it easy if you're trying to like line up a couple designs. You can use the guidelines to make sure everything's lined up nicely on those lines. So when you're working with a design or an object, if you select that object, you can do create guides left and right, top and bottom, through the center, angled, and then these are with some stones too. So when I left click, you'll see my guides just going there. If I left click top and bottom, you'll see them going across now. And then again, centered through our entire object. So most of the times you'll use something like for a guide is probably if you're like rearranging text or something like that and you want it all on one line. That's most of the time when we'll see something like that being used, or like, you know, if you're trying to match up a certain height or an object to the height and width of another design, you can, or the height of another design, you'll use the top and bottom, and then your next shape you can try to draw using the same height as the last object. So most of the times we don't tend to use too many of these guidelines, but the tools are there in case they're needed. So next we have our text spacing. So this is actually a tool we're going to use a lot when we're designing. I use this quite a bit in a lot of the webinars when we're creating actual designs. So what the text spacing tool will do for us, especially if we're creating like a knockout or something like that, it really comes in handy. But let's go ahead and we'll just change this font. So the text spacing, what that's going to do is we have the buttons here. So this will decrease our character spacing and this will increase. So when a font is going just horizontal like you see here, we're going to use the decrease and increase, where it's pointing in left and right and out left and right. And then you'll see ones next to it where the arrows are pointing up and down and up. So either decreasing the characters up and down or increasing the space when it's a vertical text. So if we have a text like this, so we have our text here going horizontal. So if I use these two buttons here, I can decrease the space between each character. Now, if you ever do something like this, and we'll do it a lot when we create knockouts, and we'll decrease the character count so we get more of the design or the object we're laying on top of the knockout to show. When we do this, we have to be careful though, because when I go to my wireframe, this will overlap the letters. So before we, use the knockout or we go any further with this design, once we have the spacing correct, we'll probably want to weld it together. That way all the text blends into one. So with our button here, the increase, we'll just move them further apart. So just the complete opposite. And then we also have this TS button on the left side. This is how I usually end up using it. If you actually left click this button, you'll see, and I'll go to my enhanced view too. So you'll see these arrows, one kind of pointing down and then one over here pointing to the right. So when it's a horizontal text, you can grab the arrow that's pointing to the right. And if you just left click and hold, you can actually move the text spacing a lot quicker and have a little bit more control doing it this way. If you just want a quick nudge or two, you can use the button. But most of the time, I usually just grab it using the TS button, the text spacing button, and then just pulling it out or moving it in as close as needed. So same thing with our text here. When it's a vertical text like this, instead of using the arrow pointing to the right, we're going to use the arrow pointing down. and left click and hold, and then I can move those closer together, further apart, or however I want them set up. Or again, you have the TS buttons going up and or decreasing and increasing. So you can decrease it or increase the space between each character. So this sets up designs really nicely, depending again if we want to do a KO or possibly sometimes we'll do a small text and space it across our entire design. So the text space saves us from, instead of having to, let's say we wanted our baseball text to be 13 inches wide. Well, if I don't use the text spacing, then it stretches all my characters. But by using the text spacing, I can pull this out and it doesn't necessarily like change the proportion of my design. It just increases the space between each letter. So next we just have nudge object. This is simply just gonna move your object just a little bit. It's almost pretty much just like the arrow keys. So you can use the arrow keys to nudge your design, or you can use the actual nudge object button here. And you'll see that if I zoom in, it is moving just a little bit, but you can control how big the nudge is. So if I change that to 0.1, now you can see it moving a little bit more, and so on. So the nudge probably won't be used too much because you'll just use your keys, or you'll simply just use left click and drag your mouse to move the object. All right, so next we have our selection tab here, and the main three we'll really look at are these three here. The main one we're going to use is this select all between two. And what that does is if we ever have, let's just draw, or I'll just draw a path around our design here. So if we ever have a design like this, and I want to select all the stones between a select stones, I can hold shift. So I'm going to grab this one here, hold shift, select this one here. Let's go back to my edit tab, and I can select all stones between 2 points. So by selecting these two end ones, it's going to select every stone in between there for me. So this is nice when you're designing. If you just need like a selection of maybe a couple stones, select the two in between, and then we'll just change it just like that. I think I forgot to break apart a path. I'll have to look. Now, the next one is pretty cool too. Let's say we have a square like this, and we'll just do a quick hatch fill. Let's make sure we add stones. And now if I just want to select a random line or path through this design to maybe create just a camo look or just a different look throughout my design, what I can do is, let's say I just draw the B-spline. I can go through my design like this. I have my line selected, and you select the curve, click our button, and every one of those stones that curve was on, it will select through our design. So if there's ever just a row or just a small selection of stones we want, we can just put a line over it, select that line, and click our button here, and that's going to pick up every stone on that line. Now if we had right now you can see how I still have those stones selected that was on the line. Now, if I zoom out here, you can see that line that we have selected. What this button does is if I actually want all the stones that aren't on that line, I can click this and it will invert the selection and actually select all the stones that aren't on that line. So if you ever have a stone selected, like a stone path selected, and you actually want to select everything else, or you quickly want to move to all the other stones, you can hit this invert the current selection and it'll move to the other stones. So the main one you'll probably use is the select between two. That just allows you to select a lot of stones and at once. But the other ones are pretty cool. Just drawing something like this through some designs, or let's say I had all my purple selected because I wanted to change them to gold, and now I need to change my purple to another color. Instead of clicking the purple, selecting all, I just click this button here. It recognizes the purple as a different color, and then I can change that to blue. Alright, so next we have our copy selected. And now these are pretty much just like the nudge tool. It's simply gonna, whatever object you have, it's just gonna make a copy in whatever direction the arrow is pointing, and you click. So then I could highlight all these and just make another copy that way. Highlight all these, make a copy down. And you can just control the distance by just changing this number here. So again, you could always just do a Control-C, Control-V, but if you also just wanted a quick copy, you can just select the object and make a copy. This one here will just make a copy of the selected object right on top of itself. So it's pretty much just a copy and paste right on top, or you can move it in any direction of the arrow here. All right, so any questions about our top tools here, the line, guides, text spacing, nudge, selection, or copy? Those are the pretty easy ones where it's kind of, a little self-explanatory, but the text spacing and the selection definitely need a little guidance. Alright, we'll keep on going. So this is where we get into some more of our designing tools. So the fill between is very similar to the select between 2 points, but it does the opposite. So if you have 2 points, or let's say we have a design like this. We'll just write some text out. So let's write Mustangs. So let's space this out. And if I just wanted like a quick underline of a couple stones, what I can do is drop one stone here. Yeah, Travis, we'll be able to, we're going to record the webinar. So when it's done, usually within the next day or two, we'll have the recording listed on our YouTube channel. And where the download link was for the actual download file today, it'll be replaced with the recorded link. All right, have a great night. So what I can do is I have this stone here. I'm going to make a copy and slide it all the way to this side here. I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to select this stone here. So now I have these 2 stones selected, and I'm going to hit fill between 2. So that's going to give me a nice row between 2. Now this is on a path now. So before we like add color to it or change anything around, we want to break that apart. And now by using my copy selected, I can go to 0.02 hit the down arrow, maybe make that a different color, hit the down arrow, and then I'll make those black again. So just like that, we have a nice little rhinestone border underneath our text. So to make the copy, you can do a Control-C, Control-V, or you can just hit this button right here and it will copy selected. So when you have a stone like this, click on it, click this button right here, and I just hold Shift to keep it perfectly in line. Select these two objects, fill between two, and then it adds all the stones spaced perfectly in between. Now this fill between buttons can actually be used with other shapes too. So if you had, let's say you had some stars underneath here, I can select both of these objects, hit fill between two, and you'll see how it puts all those stars right in a row for me. So when it's on this path, once you hit fill between two, and you can actually do this with the stones, I didn't show you this, but if I hit on the down arrow, it will reduce the stars in my count. So have you ever like tried to, like a design like this, if I had to make a star and then try to space it perfectly between this one, perfectly between this one, perfect, you know, when you start trying to do it by hand, the spacing between all the stars don't always add up or look perfect. So when it's on something like this, the spacing between each star is perfect every time. So you don't have to sit there and guess, oh, is this right or not? And that will work with any shape or any object you have. So even let's say you had a clip art image. We got a baseball player here, fill between two. It's going to give me all my objects just like that. Yeah, so we just had someone saying they've been using it for 8 months and didn't know many of these things. Yeah, Patty, these ones, some of these tools really go unnoticed, and they're some of our easier tools for designing. And I get that, you know, when we do this type of webinar, it's pretty much the same thing every time. You know, a lot of these tools kind of go unnoticed where they're big time savers and make it, you know, where you don't have to worry about is everything lined up, you know, stuff like that. So, oh, now it's going to error out right now. And the reason, I'll show you why it did that. Those stars were still on a path. That's why I'm able to control how many to add up or down with those arrows. When it's on there, if you try to change the color, it's going to give you an error. So if for some reason it just errored out on you like that, when you do the fill between two, just break your curve apart. So what I mean by that is I had my star, I had another star, I did the fill between two. Right now, if I select this middle star, it selects all my stars and it sees it as like on a path. So if I hit down here, it will reduce the star count. If I hit up, it'll give me more. So when it's on this path, if I try to change the color, it will give me an error and close out Corel. So if you hit clear path, just like we were working with stones, now these stars are all individual and you can change the colors are all the same, however you want to set it up, without them actually, without getting that error or closing out Corel. So the next button is going to be our split feature. Excuse me. So a few of you have probably already seen this. I've used this feature in some of my webinars. Again, it's one of my favorite tools. Makes it really easy to create designs, just quick designs. So like right now, let's say I have a Buccaneers t-shirt or design. I can go ahead and pick a nice font. Hey Terry, welcome. go ahead and size that up. Maybe make it a little bit taller. And then this split button, what this does, if you look down here at the bottom, it's going to give you a little hint of what it does. So left click splits vertical, right click horizontal, shift click is a custom. So with our design here, if I do a left click, it's going to split my text vertically down the middle. So it's going to find the middle point and switch it just like that. If I right click, it'll do a horizontal split right down the middle. Now the best part of this is anyone that's using like a vinyl knows like a design like this can be very hard to line up, because if you're off at all, sometimes you'll see like your t-shirt showing through. What the split feature actually does is you see this number right next to it, this 0.02. Yeah, it does it with any shape. So, you know, if we had our star, you hit split, it'll split it right down the center that way. Right click down the middle. So it's always going to find the middle point. So on a star like this, this is the top point, this is the bottom. Wherever that middle point is, it's just going to split it in half. And you can use it more than once on the same object. So I can come back here, right click it again, right click this one again, split. And then I can almost do like a ombre kind of style. My design can end up looking like something like that. Now that's a lot of work because of the layers, but it definitely can add a pretty cool texture or look to your design. Now the best part of this feature is if I go to my wireframe, these actually overlap just a little bit. So if you're off lining these up at all, you won't see your t-shirt showing through or anything like that. So it automatically adds a small overlap. So this gray, this dark gray actually ends underneath this lighter gray. And this dark gray would end, or this one ends underneath this one too. So each one will slightly overlap each other. So when you go to press your t-shirt, you end up, you don't see little like t-shirt areas showing through like that. If we press it too long and the vinyl shrinks, you know, errors like that. So that split tool has that feature built into it. So not only is it splitting it, but it's also doing a slight overlap for you too. And then again, just to add to this design, we throw our football, make it a little bit bigger. And then this is where I like to use my text spacing tool. So football just like that, maybe a little bit shorter. And instead of pulling it across like that, so do you guys think that design looks better? Or if I bring this back in, using my text spacing tool and pulling it across this way. Yeah, I definitely like the text spacing a lot better. It seems like the majority is saying text spacing too. So usually I'll actually bring it in kind of a little bit out or inside of my text so it looks something like this at the end. But yeah, it just makes your design look so much cleaner than trying to stretch football. Because then you end up going like, is that too wide? Should I make this smaller? You know, stuff like that. Where this is just going to look clean and not stretched out. So I mean, within seconds, just using our split tool and our text spacing, we just made a brand new t-shirt. So I can go to my men's, front, and now I'm ready for my next Buccaneers football game. right, so any questions on the split tool or anything we've covered so far? All right, so the next would be our knockout. So our knockout's one of our more popular tools. Have you guys seen the knockout before? Does everyone know what the knockout is? Okay, so most of us have. We got a couple new, so no. So what that is what I'll set it up real quick. So I'm going to set up 2 text fields, and does anyone have a mascot we want to use tonight? Wildcats. Okay, I saw Wildcats first. So we'll do Wildcats. And here, hey Jesse, welcome. We'll do football. And again, when we're working with the knockouts, I kind of mentioned this a little earlier, is we want to reduce our spacing between the text so it shows more of our design. So right now what I'm going to do is use my text spacing, and I'm going to bring this in. So I'm going to decrease the spacing between the characters. So something just like that. We don't want to go too much where it's hard to read what it actually says. But definitely the more we go in, the better results we're going to get. Something just like that. And then when we're done setting up our design, again, we want to make sure we can align everything. So you can move the individual letters most of the time. What I did was use the text effects. So what this did is create an envelope. So this right now is actually an envelope shape. So if I click the TS, it won't let me move the individual letters. So if it's stuck in an envelope like this text is, you'll need to use the actual like text spacing buttons. All right, so once that's set up, we'll go ahead and weld that together. And now we'll go to add artwork. Got my Wildcat mascot here. So we'll go ahead and change that to just a different color so we can see it. So what the knockout's going to do for us is, let's say we have, now again, wherever we have, the knockout actually has 2 different buttons. It has a left and a right click to it. So I'm going to make this design, my Wildcat, a little bit bigger than the text so you can see how some of it hangs outside of the text field. And we'll go ahead and center it just so it's all even. So I'm going to highlight my entire design, and I'm going to left click the KO button. So what that does is anywhere on my design where that blue was layered on top, it's going to layer this, it's going to capture the blue or the Wildcat and give me a 0.02 knockout around that design. So that 0.02, that number right here, represents the space between our object and the text. So if I have the same design, increase this to 0.06, left click, you can see how much space now is between our text and the object. Now when I do a left click, you can see everything that's not overlapping. So his ears up here, it's kind of like chin hair down here, and the back of his hair down here don't actually get captured through the design. So what we want to do is now, if I go back again, if I highlight and right click it, so I'm just going to right click the KO, and let's make this, let's just split the difference, 0.03. It will still do a knockout for me, but it will keep anything that's outside of my text. So any of these areas on the inside too that aren't actually overlapping, it will still show me that part of my design. So like a design like this, you can kind of place maybe, I try to look for an area that's really condensed with the letters, so maybe I'll hang it off somewhere here, do Wildcats football, right click the knockout. Actually, let's drag it down just a little bit so it's kind of hanging off. Right click knockout, and then you can always add some text to customize it. Pick a nice text, and then we'll just add Mama 20 underneath. So someone asked, Carol asked, does this only work with text like in the back, or can you reverse it? You could definitely reverse it. The only issue with that is if I had this Wildcat has a lot of space, this open space in it. So if the Wildcat was in the back and the text was in the front, it would end up looking something like that. So it doesn't look too good. If you right click, it'll have a little bit of a different look, something like that. But you'll usually want the object on top of the text. But the knockout is one of the most popular buttons in the software, probably. All right. So the next button we have is going to be our magic trap. So how many people are familiar with the magic trap button actually does in the software? And what its purpose. Okay. All right. So do a lot of people use, or like a lot of people in the webinar, are we working with vinyl? Or are we doing printing? Okay, so a lot of vinyl. Okay, perfect. So sometimes let's say we're doing a design with glitter. So anyone new to the industry, you cannot layer the glitter vinyl on top of glitter. So if I have a design like this and I want this background to be glitter black and the star on top to be glitter, I have to pretty much either simplify this or trap it so they're not overlapping. Because right now, the star is completely overlapping the circle. So a lot of times we'll see the trim, simplify, or the trim or the simplify button used. So what the trim does and simplify are going to be pretty much the same. It cuts out this area where the star is. So now the vinyl isn't actually layered on top of each other because the star, the area behind the black, is cut out. So the problem with this is now when I go to press this design, because it's two colors, I have to press them at separate times. If I hold down the black too long, or I don't line up the blue star perfectly, we see a lot of times where the t-shirt will look like that. So let's say our t-shirt behind it is red. We see little areas where the t-shirt shows through. So have you guys ran into any issues like that before? Yeah, even I mean even with like easy weed and stuff too, if you can layer easy weed, but yeah, you can definitely like if you didn't and you did this trapping method instead, it doesn't matter what vinyl it is. It's, you know, if it's cut out like the way we did here, a lot of times when we go to press it, if it needs to be lined up perfect, most of, like 99% of the time we're not going to line it up perfect. So you're going to see some type of, you know, t-shirt or color showing through, or you're sitting there for a really really long time trying to like stretch the shirt out to make it fit properly and stuff like that. So the magic trap is going to save us from having errors or issues like this. So instead, I'm going to go back, go ahead and layer these so you can see again the black is a complete circle. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click the magic trap button instead of like trim or simplify. So when I click magic trap, again, nothing really looked like it's changed. If I move this over, you can see how this is cut out again now. Now the only difference is, just like our split tool, this star now is actually layered underneath the black. So it goes, and if I move it to the front, it's the black's layered underneath it. So it's still trapped. So if I go to my wireframe, you can see this slight overlap. So now, if my vinyl shrinks, or if I have to move this over a little, or if I'm off a little when I press, you have to move. If I just nudge this a bit to the right or left, you see how you don't see any of our t-shirt showing through now. So it gives us a little room for error. I have to nudge it 2 or 3 times in the opposite direction for some of that white to show through. So that's going to help us when we're pressing these designs, for us not to get like, now we can still use this with glitter, and I don't have to worry about, you know, pressing the vinyl too long or shrinkage or, you know, anything like that. No, because, so someone asked if it has any issues with like glitter, like picking up layers or picking up the edges or anything after a while. No, because the majority of this star is going to be the white, is going to be pressed to the white, which is going to be our apparel. So it's going to have a strong enough hold onto it where it's not going to give us any issues like that. Yep, so you just, now the magic trap only works with 2 layers. So if you had a couple layers on top of each other, like if you had another star on top of this one, let's go back to the beginning so we can see this process. That was a good question. So let's go here. Okay, so we have a star here and then another star on top of it. So if I need to trap all these designs, let's say if I was, hey Lori, there's not a way to see anyone else's questions. As they come in, I'll try to read out as many as possible then. So now I have 3 different layers. All tend to be glitter, so I need to use, you know, the magic trap to set this up. So what I want to do is start with my like the 2 back layers. So even if this is a 4-color design, I want to start with my back layers. So I'll select my blue and black first, magic trap. Then I would do my pink and blue magic trap, and then my red and pink magic trap. And that way, that ensures that each one's magic trap perfectly. Otherwise, if I started in the opposite direction, let's say I did the red to the pink magic trap, and then pink to the blue magic trap, then blue to the black magic trap. Towards the end, you can get sometimes, see how I have these layers in here now? So that's why we want to start the 2 first, like the back layers. Otherwise, sometimes you'll get little pieces like this that are left in here. So does that magic track make sense? Any questions on that button? All right. All right, so now we got a couple more buttons down here, and we'll pretty much, what we'll do is cover these last four here, and then I want to get into the fonts, and we'll go over these ones. We won't really use too much except the power clip, but I want to save the power clip for another time because that's a little bit more in depth. So we'll go over the power clip another time, and then we won't really use the magic templates anymore because the live templates are gonna pretty much take these out of, we don't, the live templates make it so much easier that we don't use the magic templates anymore. And then our magic patterns we'll go over another time too. For those, we can go a little bit more in depth. So we'll finish with these four, and then we'll go up to our font window. So what our W here with the line through it, what that does is just help make weed boxes for you and make it easier to weed so your designs, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I hit a weed box around here, it actually cuts all the way up almost to that line. So when you're going to weed it, it's like these little pieces, you're just pulling it out instead of having to go in and grab all these little tiny areas. This text or this design is not going to make it too hard, but other designs, when you have little intricate parts to it, sometimes this weed box really helps because it puts a line through each open area through the middle. So you just pull down on the middle and just makes your weeding a little bit easier. The next is our punch through. So if we have a design set up like this and we have our text, I can select the text, hit the P. It's like not registering that button. Okay, there it goes. So when you have your text like this, when you click the P, it should just punch those letters right through your design. So, good question that came in. On the last design, let me go back real quick. When we have, let's say we have our design like this and we have our weed box, how does that affect the weed box that your system puts in? So you would just use this weed box if instead of like our templates tab. And if you had like a weed box in like your cut settings, you could turn that off. Otherwise, it's a square. So it would literally like cut a weed box around your box. So it's not going to go through and like cut the design or do anything weird. It would just add a little bit of space around that whole weed box and then just cut another box right around it. So it would waste a little bit of material. So I'd probably turn off, if you're using one weed box, you don't need to have your cutter denote or cutter adding one too. So yeah, that was a good question. All right. So the next button is going to be just our mirror. So that's pretty easy with that button. It was simply just mirror it for us. Pick a letter that you can actually see. Just like that. So it actually makes a copy and mirrors. So it's not just simply a mirror. And then our last button is our reverse weed button, and this is another cool, just an easy way to make some like a quick design. Let's say I had a Buccaneers text like this. So we got our Buccaneers. Put a little curve to it. And I'm going to left click reverse weed. And so this black area now is my design, and everything else is cut out of it. And if you right click this W, you can actually set the tolerance. So if I make this negative 0.05, hit OK. If I have the same text, left click, you can see that it doesn't actually go outside my box now. So what the tolerance is how far off your edge you want your design to kind of poke out. So if you go negative, it will go inside this box. If you go positive, so I'll do 0.05 this time, it will go outside that box. So usually this is the whole point of the tool, to have it set up something like this. But if you want it to be inside, you can set that to a negative tolerance and it'll go to the inside. But then again, just write out football. Pick your text spacing, pull that across. Mockups tab, t-shirt, and then I have a brand new t-shirt. So any questions on our tools here? Does it mirror vertically? No, it's just going to mirror horizontal on this one. Now, if you do need to mirror something vertically, you'll have the same tools up here. So you have your horizontal and vertical mirror up here, but it will not make a copy. It'll just simply mirror it, which doesn't help when it's just pretty much the same letter. This is distribute spacing, but we're going to get into these three in the add stones, probably on the next one, and some of the magic patterns. That way we can get into our font tab. All right, perfect. All right, so up top here, you'll see these two arrows. These are going to be, this is going to open up our font section of the design wizard. Now, all the fonts you have installed into your computer go into the font window in our end and Corel's. So it's not like this window you can find special fonts that you can in the other one. It just has a lot of our tools in it as well that make it really easy. So I tend to use this font window a lot to search and find fonts or to edit fonts that I'm currently working on. So first thing, I'm going to go through the font preview and how some of our designs or how some of our custom made fonts will work, and how the preview will help show how these fonts are meant to be set up. So by hitting find font, I'm going to search TRW, and that's going to list all my TRW fonts. So any font that you purchase from us will start with the word or with the letters TRW. So when I click on a font, up here in the window, you'll see under the font preview, you'll see just the word lower. Well, half of the word lower. It's actually written out in an uppercase font, but it says lower. So what this is telling me is in order to see the font as the font preview is showing it, I have to type in lowercase. So if I'm typing in all uppercase and I write out Knowles and I select this TRW12 rounded, nothing shows up. It kind of just makes my font go away. Now you can still see something is selected, but nothing's actually showing up. The reason why is because I need to type lowercase in order to see it. So as I type lowercase, even though it's an uppercase font, you can now see it. So some of the fonts might be a little confusing that way, but if we pay attention to the font preview, we'll be able to know if this has an upper or lowercase and how to type it out to get those characters. So if I go to a font here, let's just kind of go through. So our Western font actually has an upper and lowercase font. So not every font we produce will have lowercase features. Not every font we produce will have uppercase. Some will have numbers, some won't. Some will just be numbers. So the font preview will save you a lot of hassle of knowing what characters work here. So now I could type all uppercase if I wanted. I could do a title case where it's just the first letter with this font because it has an upper and a lower. So as you go through different fonts, you'll see, so this one here, this is a little bit different. This is a 2-color font. So you can see the lowercase is the outside color and the uppercase is the inside. So because I typed in title case, my N is the opposite of all my other letters. So if I hit delete and just retype that as a lowercase, now you'll see all the letters that way. Now, with the software, if I want, right now I typed in all lowercase. Let's just switch it up to all uppercase on this one. So you don't have, if you're working out of the software, the design wizard, you don't have to type all lowercase and then all uppercase and try to match these up. Okay, it's going to be very hard and it's not going to, you'll probably be able to get it, but it's just very time consuming this way. So all we have to do is once we type it out in either upper or lower case, you have this number 2 on your software up top here. So what that 2 is it gives you the second color for 2-color fonts. So I select Knowles, hit 2, and it automatically fills in the inside of that font. Now that's a special font. So you can't just take any font and hit the number 2 and it's going to fill it or give it an outline. These are special made fonts so that they know to fill in those areas. So same thing here. If I select this one and hit 2, it knows to add the stones to the outside. It will always start as those orange stones, but you can select them all and change the colors. So same thing with some of our vector fonts. Sometimes, like this one here, the font is actually shown in lowercase. So if I have this font here and I go click it, because this is uppercase, it's not showing. If I switch it to lowercase, it shows up fine. So our vector fonts will work like this too. Some also have a 2 or 3 color look or a 2-color look. So this one here, the uppercase is the inside and the lowercase is kind of the bold outside. So if I hit the number 2, it knows to fill in the inside just like that. All right, so whatever, any of these fonts, however they're set up, you'll see up or lower. Sometimes it'll be uppercase, but it'll be lowercase letters. So that just means to get the lowercase, you have to type in uppercase. So it's a little confusing when they're the opposite. But again, if you just pay attention to the font preview, it will show you what kind of features you have in the software, or what type of font. So this one, again, doesn't have an upper. Even though it says upper, it's in a Arial bold, just a basic Arial font. So that still means that it's not going to type anything when it's in uppercase. All right. So any questions? So up here you'll see, so we just had a question come in. How do you make your fonts? How do you make fonts in your favorite, or add them to your favorite font? So actually right down here you'll see add to faves and remove to faves. So if there's, let's say you're working on a design, or like this is gonna be for the Knowles school, and you know they want all their numbers and letters in this font. So if I'm used to working with this font, let me scroll back down. Right now, I already forgot which one exactly I was using. That was one of the athletic ones. Let's do TRW athletic. There we go. All right, so athletic 16. If I know I have to do an entire like design or a few different designs using this font, I click add to faves, and you'll see that right there. I don't need this TRW 301 anymore. I'm going to hit remove. So then you can just keep adding or removing fonts into your favorites. And yeah, you can find any font here. So if you type impact, you'll see impacts there. So you can switch between just basic fonts in your system. Sometimes you'll have to type out like a few letters. Like if I type out A, it's not going to list every A font. But if I start typing out Arial, once you hit 3 letters, it usually pulls up everything that it recognizes with those 3 characters. All right. So up here we have a few different buttons too. So all these will help us when we're designing within our fonts. The E is just going to open up an edit box. So if you click E, you'll see I had the word Knowles selected. It'll just pop up with this little edit box, and you can retype it to whatever you'd like. You can change the font, change the size, you know, any other features you'd want, hit OK, and it'll just change it just like that for you. The U, the lowercase L, which looks like an I, and the T are all just different cases. So we have our uppercase, our lowercase, and then our title case. So those are just those 3 buttons there. The 2, again, we went over that. We'll give you the second color for any fonts that's a 2-color font. So with this design here, this Mustangs, because it has an upper and lowercase, it's not set up as a 2-color font. But if I hit the 2 on it, it will just give me that font in the opposite case. So right now it's all in lowercase. If I hit 2, it's just going to rewrite the text right on top, all uppercase. So we set those fonts up so they match up perfectly. If you do it to a font that doesn't, it's just going to give you a copy with the other case right on top of it. The V will make your text vertical. And then it usually adds a little bit extra spacing. So then you hit the TS and then just pull that up. And then you're set. And if you hit it again, it'll move it back to horizontal text. So the B is actually a pretty cool feature too. This breaks apart your text field. So let's say you have a text like this. I use my center to make sure everything's centered. But now when I try to grab Mustangs, it grabs soccer too. So it's all kind of one text field. Well, what we can do is click the B, and it'll break up individual words into their own text field or text box. Now, if you only have one word like Mustangs here and you click the B, it'll break each individual letter into its own. So sometimes you might see a design like this. And a lot of times we just use the break apart feature to set up those designs. All right, and then the last two we have, so let me go ahead and repeat that one for us real quick. So when it's two, I started off by just writing Mustangs, hitting enter, and soccer. So now this is just all one text field. So we're going to hit the B, and the first time we'll break apart the different text, or each word into its own box. So I have soccer and Mustangs now. So if I click that one more time when it's only just has Mustang selected, so I click the left click the B again, each letter is broken up into its own. But you can still type this, so I could keep typing inside that character. We don't want to do that, but each one of these is still a text field. So what I did is I held shift and I selected the S and the M. And I'm going to hold shift and I'm just going to bring those box. I'm going to pull at this diagonal box here, or the corner box. Hold shift while I do it. And then I just move in those letters manually afterwards. And then with this soccer text here, we just made it a little bit smaller. And then use our text spacing to bring it across just like that. And another time you'll use this B is if anyone's used any of those script fonts that we have. So the Stadium font here, let me move it to title case. The Stadium font has all those tails on it. So sometimes those tails, you can see on this one, this tail is a little bit bigger than my characters are. So right now this is all one font. However, if I hit the B, it'll break off my tail. I can move that in a little bit, reline it up, and then just weld it back together when I'm done. And now that looks a lot cleaner. So there's a couple times where this break apart will come in handy. Definitely with the script tails, and then, you know, like that Mustang soccer example too. And then the last two we have M and UM. The M was for our old monograms, and then the UM was for our universal monogram. So we kind of came out with the universal one second, but we wanted to make it a quick button in case what you used to have to do, or if you don't have the software, you can still use our universal monograms. But if anyone remembers, that's when you had like the TRW here. And let's see if I have any. Not sure if I have the universal ones installed. Oh yeah, here we go. So these were when we had like a 3 color. You'd have to highlight this W, come up top here, and like switch it to V3 right, and it just became not fun. So now all you have to do with these monograms is just click for the universal ones. You just click the UM and it fixes that right for you. If you have just a basic old monogram, and those are just going to be by typing TRW mono, when you click the regular M, it'll fix those ones for you. So the M and the UM are just, all they do is shape your monograms. So the monogram fonts are all on the website. If you just search here monograms, you'll see all these listed. We have some monogram packs too that have all these fonts listed in them too. Monogram 1, you'll see more of the baseball like this. Actually, the Universal has these too, so probably better to get the Universal pack. I think it has a little bit more in it, and it has the stone feature on top of it too. So I would definitely try to get the Universal monograms if you haven't purchased any monograms, and you don't need them both. So if you purchase a Universal, don't you see a Universal baseball one, and then just a baseball monogram. They're most likely the same. And what we mean by universal is with the software, we make that a one-click button. Let's say you're working on like this silhouette or something like that. You would have to use a universal in order to be able to change it. So it looks like Matt just went live too. But we're pretty much wrapping up with ours. So since Matt came on, was there any other questions on tonight's webinar with any of the fonts or edit tab features? And Tanya, give him a hard time for going on. He knows I'm probably still going. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Louise, how many hours does one need with you? It's all different. We try to. If you're looking for more one-on-ones, just send me just send us a email. Sorry, and I can get you some more information on that. But just doing some of these free webinars, I would definitely try to do as many of those as possible too. The next couple weeks, we're doing some overviews of all the basic settings. Can we use the old monograms font with the UM? No, just use you would just click the M. So Chris, instead of hitting UM, you just hit M and it'll still shape them just like they're supposed to. But yeah, anything like that, definitely check out as much free stuff as possible. Give us a call. We can definitely walk you through some features too. But if you need any additional training, we definitely offer that too. So just let us know and we can help you with that. But yeah, the next couple weeks, we're just going to be doing a lot of these overviews. So again, last week, if you're new and you missed out the live template editor and the text effects, I would definitely go ahead and check that out from last week. It's on our YouTube channel already. But that's going to help you set up all your folders, walk you through live templates, and then walk you through a little bit of setting up them using the text effects. All right, guys. Any other questions, give us a call at 941-755-1696 or shoot us an email at info@therhinestoneworld.com. Always remember to ask for Gabe. All right, guys. Have a great night.